Welcome to another oil painting. I'm gonna add a little bit of, this is actually spiked lavender. Last time I used odorless mineral spirits for this, but you could use anything you want. This is a canvas that was already toned ahead of time with acrylic. I've noticed that spiked lavender acts a little different. I don't know why I'm using it right now, but well, let's try something different with the start here. Hey Jonas. Alrighty, so the reference is on the left. It's not an ideal reference for a portrait sketch just because it's so flat, but I thought I would go ahead and use it anyway. Anyone that may be new to this series of videos, it's very improv. By improv, I mean very improv. Feel free to ask me any questions while I'm painting. It's not so much of a how-to tutorial per se, though you know that my channel is pretty much all about portrait painting tutorials. But then again, it's also about variety. I've got the top of the head. So the spiked lavender is not as it doesn't flow as the Gamsol does. So tomorrow, and yes, I mean tomorrow, I do hope to be back tomorrow. I will just use the Gamsol. This was just kind of, to be honest, it's what was already on my palette, and I was running late. So yeah, it is what it is. Axes for the eyes, somewhere over there. Bottom of the nose over here. Mouth is gonna fit somewhere over here. Alrighty. So the shape for the eyes is gonna be over here. Forehead's kind of tall. So here's an idea. For likeness sake, try to turn your model kind of into a caricature. I say that the model's forehead is a little tall. So I will remind myself of that finding. The face is kind of like a diamond, so a little bit sticks out a little bit more over here. Geez, that spiked lavender is tearing through the acrylic. Not the canvas itself. This is not acrylic, but the tone is acrylic. What I'm using is oil paint. So yeah, this is why I've got the gloves, because I'll just go in and adjust stuff like this on the fly. Alright, that's good enough for the outside shape, I would say. Of course, the mouth is not going to end up being that wide. Next step of this really simple process is to go in with the light and shadow with color. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up a skin tone on my palette. Again, please don't concern yourself with color. You can just use burnt sienna white, ultramarine blue, and get pretty much any of the skin tones that you're going to see me paint today. Thanks, Jonas. Glad you liked the quick start also. I am going to, you know what? I'm going to do something a little different. This is the brush that had the spiked lavender. This is the culprit here. You see how this is acting a little weird, acting a little strange. So I'm going to use this to mix the skin color on my palette. Again, don't concern yourself with the color. Though, if you want some help on mixing skin tones, I've got plenty of videos where there's a palette on the side and you can see the mixtures, and pretty much all of the YouTube portrait painting world, not all of it, but a great majority of it has that palette on the side. For me, it hurts my shoulder to constantly mix up over here, so I prefer to have the palette below So here, I'm using this big brush to add the color. The emphasis is on the light and shadow, but also because these are quick paintings, I don't want to have to fight that initial tone. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue because that looks a tad bit too yellow for me. So let's take some of this off. Actually kind of works out now that I took this off. Maybe that's what I should have done all along. Ooh, that's spike lavender. You know, one thing I've noticed about spike lavender, it actually doesn't evaporate as much as Gamsol. So I've left it on my palette overnight. I was using it yesterday, and it's still like nothing happened. But if you leave Gamsol out overnight, and that's little pieces of the paper towel. Okay, good. Oh, thank you, Angus. That's so kind of you. Question from Pizarro: can you explain when to add linseed oil to colors while painting? You know what I do? Because I use a wooden palette, and plot twist here, I'm using a different palette. But it's the same color setup, and of course I love the palette that I use, but this is a wooden palette. You see how shiny it is over here? Every night when I clean my wooden palettes, I use linseed oil. So I actually apply it to the palette, so it sits there overnight. That's how I incorporate linseed oil, though you could use it later on. I wouldn't use it for anything other than conditioning your palette or cleaning your palette if it's a wooden palette. And if you want to never have to clean your brushes, well, of course you can leave your brushes in a container of linseed oil, but these days I am cleaning my brushes. Yeah, that's kind of what I have to do because I'm using alkyds. But yeah, linseed oil, many applications, but I wouldn't use it to blend or anything like that in the beginning. You can use it for glazes after a couple layers. What we're gonna do here, all of these paintings are gonna be one layer, one sitting. Basically, how fast can I think? How fast can I react? And then I apply this thinking to my long-term paintings. These are fun sketches. That's why it says portrait sketch in oil colors. Hi, Kathy. Hey, Susan. Okay, so here's something I almost always do. I almost always make that mouth too low relative to the nose. So again, be aware of the things that you do. Be aware of your tendencies. I also have a tendency to widen faces so much, and quick poses or quick sketches like this will actually help you faster, help you see your tendencies faster than spending a month on a face just to notice you have to adjust the mouth, because you don't see it. The more time you spend on something, the less you're actually looking and the more you're feeling, and sometimes feelings are not good for progress. So with a tad bit of caution, I'm looking now at the silhouette, and I'm going to try to get this as close as possible to what I see. I'm pretty much just using black and red. Mark Elliott wrote, what my title says 4 colors? Uh-oh. I tried to title it Portrait Sketch in Oil Colors 4. Oh, don't be confused with 4. This is just the 4th. I ran out of titles for my paintings, my painting stream, so next time, Portrait Sketch in Oil Color 5, Portrait Sketch in Oil Color 6, Portrait Sketch in Oil Color 7. That's just how I'm titling it. it doesn't mean I'm using 4 colors. But thank you for pointing that out. That's something I'm going to have to take into account. I'm probably going to have to explain that or title my videos a little differently. Yeah, no problems, Markel. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, no, it's not 4 colors. It's though I could do this in 4 colors, but it is referring to the 4th installment of this series. That way, in case anybody wants to buy any of these portrait sketches, which I won't sell for that much, maybe less than a couple hundred or something like that would be fine. Of course, we could always work something out. It'll actually be easier for me to keep track of them, titling them this way. Some of them are going to have more of an elaborate background, like the last one we did. Some of them are going to be just head and shoulders, or not even just a head, just a face. Because it depends on how much time I have, how I feel. Today, I was a little bit late. I tried to get on here at exactly 3, but I got stuck in traffic on the way back from walking my mother-in-law's dog. Alright, like I said, the head's kind of tall, so this is something I have to remember. Good to have snappy titling. It's just I've run out of ideas. That's what it is. Yeah, Zorn palette plus ultramarine is a good way to go about it. All right, so I've got this relatively good enough. Now I'm gonna go in with black and maybe a little bit of sap green using that same brush. Okay, so now the jaw right here is probably where I'm going to not render any further or develop any further. So let's figure out where the mouth goes. That's somewhere about there. The nose is somewhere about here. Here's where you take a little bit of extra time. And this eye goes about here, this eye goes about here. This gives me the angle. It's important to have a method for these sketches. So for example, when you go paint from life in a group and there are 20-minute poses, 30-minute poses at a time, you have a system. And it took about two of these paintings for me to solidify a system for this, which is what we're using here. And we're going to get into the rendering only after the features are close enough. So for example, it's okay to let that be kind of a sharp edge right now. It's okay. So having a system is useful when it comes to technical painting. For example, troubleshooting problems that occur. At some point, it is possible that a mistake, a huge mistake, can happen, and we lose track of something just because we made a huge mistake, and then we don't want to go and loop around. Kind of like being in an argument with someone and they keep repeating the same thing over and over again, thinking they're going to get a different result. It's better to have a series of steps where you can go back. And this is the step you want to go back to always. This is the step where things can go wrong. And when they can go wrong, I mean they can go really wrong. Mouth can be a little bit too big. Mouth could be a little bit this way, a little bit that way. It pays to spend a little bit more time here. Measure if you need to, measure if you have to. Use whatever it takes, but make sure that this stage, and you don't have to have a lot of detail for this. You really don't. You just have to have the shapes close, as close as you can to where they're eventually going to land. And I did spend a little more time on this, a little more caution, but as you develop, and this is part of the process, okay, so this is part of the process, no need to worry. If there is a mistake, the next series of steps is going to be such that if you need to make any corrections, you will be able to. Jonas wrote, funny quiz for everyone. Name a painter, start with R. Oh, good, good. He said someone got Rubens, Rembrandts, Reynolds, Renoir. Can I think of? I would have said Reynolds and Rembrandt right away. I don't know. I'll let you all do that one. I'm sure there's a lot of modern painters that probably should stick with old masters. Alright, there's a Filtrum. Alright, I think we're good. Now we're good. We can get into the fun stuff, the rendering stuff. Tendencies. Know your tendencies. I have a tendency to fear using my lightest value. So, combat the tendency by doing the reverse. So I'm going in with titanium white with a little bit of the skin tone that I used for this. Then I'm going to blend it around and try to sculpt out the frontal eminence of the skull. Leave out a little bit of an edge there for the frontal ridge of the skull. Okie dokie. Fight your tendencies. Work on your tendencies. Work on your weaknesses. Don't just do what is fun all the time. But have fun while working on the things that are not fun, because the things that are not fun end up becoming fun, and then you end up liking what you didn't like before, and over time, as you start liking the stuff that you didn't like, and it becomes second nature, you improve. But it takes discipline. Oh yes, it takes discipline. But have the right amount of discipline, because if you have too much discipline, if you're too strict on yourself, then you're going to hate the process, then you're going to hate improvement, and then you're going to stop. You're going to burn out. Reppin', oh, isn't there a Rodin or something like? I can't remember. Angus, have you calculated how many sketches an artist needs to do before there's competency for decent likeness? So let me tell you what, likeness, to my knowledge, because I don't know everything, but to my knowledge, likeness can be achieved even at the beginner level if you map out the exact light and shadow. I mean exact light and shadow, even at the beginner level. However, I think what your question means is, at one point, does it become second nature where you can just get the likeness right away? I think that's what you mean with this kind of approach. And I'll be the guinea pig, because it's taken me, I don't know how many times, how many YouTube videos, and I still can't get it right away. Sometimes I can, but not always. I'll be your guinea pig. This is number 4, so we'll see. But I'll say that don't worry about the number of times it takes. Angus, don't worry about the number of paintings it takes to get a likeness in a quick sketch. Rather, focus on what it is that your tendency is. Everyone's got tendencies. No one's perfect. Some people just decide to stop working on their tendencies and they start to stylize. And before you know it, you've got an abstract exhibition in some big gallery, and all of a sudden now you can't market your realist work anymore. Not always the case with everybody, but try to focus on what it is that your tendency is. If you know your tendency, and that's what teachers are for. Teachers are there to guide you, to tell you your tendencies, not so much to tell you what you did wrong, but what you can do to best optimize your time in every step. Because if you spend a long time just doing quick sketches like this, but you don't focus on, like, for example, I knew I had to attack with that light, and I knew that I had a tendency to make the mouth too low. I knew my tendencies that I had to work on at this stage. Now, if you can add this energy, more passion, more energy into your long-term paintings, ooh, that's a fun place to be. That is a really fun place to be. Hey, another person online. Hey, Shavu. And this is the deal, y'all. This is it. I mean, this is where Yupari is right now in the video painting realm of things. Yupari has ran out of titles to put on a live stream. Yupari has run out of patience of doing long-term videos, for example, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 on the internet. I'm saving that for the studio. I still do them. For example, this morning I was painting. Tonight I will be painting. Long-term studies, but I'm saving my short-term studies for YouTube. That's what these are. So in case you're wondering when I'm gonna go live again, what I'm gonna talk about, what I'm gonna do, it's really simple. Portrait sketch in oil color around 3 p.m. DC time zone. There's no pressure to worry about if I'm gonna disappear or something like that. So don't worry, I'll be here. And like I said, these are very improv. Again, I'm not gonna pretend that I know everything. There is a system of teaching yourself how to paint online that I developed for my Patreon. And that holds true to pretty much everything that I'm doing, even with the short sketches when it comes to light and shadow. So, that knowledge is universal, but being able to see proportion, to think a little bit faster, I think is good. Alright, now I'm going to change brushes here. Let's see. So studying for what? Great observation. Great question, actually. This is what I'm studying for, and it's not always the same for every exercise. But the quick painting, what you're seeing here, is studying for life, working from life. This is what I'm studying for the first painting session of a new long pose at Karen Warshall's studio in Baltimore, Maryland. I gotta drive an hour and a half to go paint from life in a long sitting, for example, 30 minutes at a time, 4 hours total. That is what I'm studying for. How can I do better with each life painting? That's what I'm studying for. For example, how can I get to the form faster? And how can I make my form more accurate? How can I do that? Well, I need to come up with a plan to do it. I can't just wish it and it'll be true. I have to have a plan of action. And another thing that I'm studying for with these paintings is how can I keep track of my steps? That's another one. Like right now I'm going into the modeling. Okay, so how do I keep track of the steps? Like, how can I make this second nature? Lovely question. It is important to know what you're studying for. Yeah, I should be done when I'm 80. I should hope to still be alive and painting when I'm 80. That's the goal. That was a good one. These days, I like to focus on the nose when I get into rendering. The eyes, I will throw some stuff in there, like I did. But you see, I didn't really get into the accent yet. Dark accents. The nose is a great place for me personally because it's where I make the most mistakes. Is everything below the nose. Yeah, the reference is a little bit washed out. I actually like the whole picture. Um, it's a woman that's on a like loading dock or something like that. So I may use it for a studio painting at some point. Of course, I can't do that on YouTube because that takes too long. But even at this stage, there has to be a way that I could have done it better. And it's been 30 minutes. There has to be a way that I could have approached this stage better. I don't know what it is yet. But I have to believe that for everything I've done here, future me should have figured out a way to do it better. I have to believe that. You need to aim for the stars, as they say. If you miss, at least you'll be whatever the quote is. But yes, I like to attack form as carefully as I can with the nose first. Yeah, I don't have to worry about the ears on this one. Oh good, I'm glad you liked the challenge, Mark L. Yeah, not having to worry about the ears is good. Angus, he said returning to light and shadow. Can better improvement be achieved with two underpaintings followed by a grisaille, the Flemish approach? Let me tell you, you can improve in every, or one can improve in every step of the process. One can improve in every step, right? But the thing is, a balance. Yes, an underpainting where the light and shadow is perfect. Like, yeah, that's a classical way to attack. And yes, that's always going to be more accurate. Of course, yes, it will be more accurate. But it's a different exercise. So, you know, I'm not going to pretend to tell you that I know everything, but what I can tell you is that balance in the long term pose and the short term is important and cannot be understated. Balance is incredibly important. Oh yeah, Mark. Ears are um, kind of like painting the arms on a figure painting. If you do figure painting, if you go to a group where you can paint a live model in any kind of pose, it's important to always focus on the torso, the rib cage, the anatomical landmarks of the human frame, and see the arms as kind of like appendages that can be adjusted. Because in every pose, the model is going to be slightly different, so you can't lock on to my understanding, you can't lock onto the arms too heavily. You can't put too much emphasis on the arms too soon. Same thing with ears, especially when working from life. The model may turn, tip and turn, and all these things, and then all of a sudden, the ears are slightly different. A little bit above, a little bit below. It depends on the perspective. Great questions today, everybody. Excellent questions. And another thing that I've noticed with my painting in particular is once I get to like that level, I slow down a tad bit too much. So I need to combat that. Find out why I slow down. Maybe I chicken out from the form. I don't know what it is. But find out what your tendencies are and combat them in a short pose. And I like 2 hours. I think 2 hours is good for this. Eventually 2.5 hours would be even better. But 2 hours is good. It's just enough time to get something done, something slightly marketable. But it's also enough time to make some big mistakes. And like a scientist, a true scientist is happy to be proven wrong in some way. A true scientist likes to be told, the theory of relativity is actually a little different than thinking of it like space is this little, like, whatever, trampoline of sorts. Actually, it's a little different. Scientists love that kind of stuff. And we have to be like little scientists if we want to improve. Combative. Oh, let me see. So another person online, you wrote, "Can we see your palette?" I can lift it up and show you it, but I can't have it like next to it, and I don't have a camera set up for it because it always messes with my streams having two cameras. But this is just what the palette looks like. All I'm using is white, yellow, red, burnt sienna, ivory black, and cobalt blue. But you can use any. You can use ultramarine blue. You can use phthalo blue. You can use any blue you want. So Mark Ellie wrote, no model ever sits 100%. Same position when they return. Yeah, the arms do move. Yeah, never saw supermodels hanging at the docks. Yeah, it was this comes from a staged picture. All right, let's look at the philtrum now. The distance from the nose to the mouth. I don't see it yet, but I'm almost positive I've got this too low. Almost positive I've got it too low because I almost always make that too low. I am also, as someone pointed out last week, I'm looking up. See my hat, which I will be selling hats like this, by the way. My website is going to be live soon. Anybody that wants to buy painting merchandise, including funny t-shirts that say I can't, I'm painting right now, or things like that. But anyway, I'm looking up, so that could be why. Okay, so I've moved that up. Now I'm going to change brushes, and I'm going to have a different brush for the color of the lips. Angus, I do actually advocate for larger canvases. However, I don't really advocate much for painting faces that much larger than life. Life size is good for painting a face. Life size is good. So the human head is, you're probably not going to find someone's head bigger than a 9. This is, what is it, 9 by 12 inch. So if someone's head is bigger than an entire foot from top to bottom, that's kind of interesting. I don't know of anyone with their head bigger than a foot, but maybe that's possible. I don't know. Now be careful with your center line when you do this, because it's almost going a little too far to the left. So almost a little too far to the left. And pay attention to the, I'm going to call this the beak of the philtrum. Everyone's beak on their upper lip by the philtrum is a little different, and this can help you with likeness if you pay attention to the beak. I just made that up. Okay, now we can add some accents, but before that, let's transfer some of this red down here. I'll add some accents for the mouth, and then we'll return to the eyes. The eyes being the headquarters. But at this point, I would hope to not have to move too much stuff. Now follow your center line. Upper lip is kind of small, kind of petite, something like that. I have to be cautious. In a portrait, these are the things that can go wrong and can make things more difficult than they have to be. Find what your tendencies are. Like mine is to make this, again, too low. Now, whether the mouth is too wide or too narrow is actually quite easy to adjust. Left and right is easy to adjust. Up and down is a pain. It can be adjusted, and it oftentimes is, but it's a pain. Oh, Mark, thank you for the super chat. Thank you. That really helps a lot. It really, really does help me a lot. Thank you so much for the super chat. Another person online wrote, I've been drawing buildings most of my adult life, making the switch to embracing drawing portraits. Back to where it all started. I've just always had this kind of fascination with portraits. I can't really tell you when it started. I think it started in elementary school, drawing Dragon Ball Z. Okay, let's add some light for the lower lip before we move around. Angus, you wrote, do you have any advice to ensure that the eyes are pointing in the same direction? Oh yeah, definitely. I'll get right to that. Again, thank you so much, Mark L. Alright, let me add some light on the lower lip, and we'll talk about that. That's actually really important. I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay. Alright, so what I like to do for the eyes is look for the tear ducts, and when you say are pointing in the same direction, I think you mean the if the model is looking in the same direction. So let's do that now. First thing is this placement. Is it correct relative to everything else? Now, obviously, I know that the chin needs to move up probably to about there. So maybe make that distinction first. All right, so make sure that this is relatively correct. And all of us can do this. We can all, in a finite sense, measure from here to here to here. It's kind of like woodworking. When you're cutting tiles or something like that to put a wood floor, you're able to measure with absolute certainty that this is a certain length relative to here. This is a certain length relative to here. So let's assume now that this is correct. Now the angle, it's not over here, but it's somewhere over here. It's not this direction, but it's somewhat in this direction. So pinpoint your tear ducts. Ask yourself, before you measure, ask yourself, does the model's eyes look a little bit wider apart than what you're used to, or do they look closer apart, or closer together, should I say? I'm going to say that these look a little bit wider, but I'll give you a place to check now. So pathway between 2 points is a line. A line in space is an angle. So this is our angle. This is now correct with absolute certainty. Plumb lines and horizontal lines are important. So this is a plumb line. This tear duct meets right on the edge of the nose, and I can do that. You can't really see me, but I can do that looking at the picture. You can also do this working from life. Just hold a plumb line here, and actually this is a little bit, not too much, but it's a little bit further to the left. And so when your accuracy improves, your changes become more and more small. So this will move a small amount this way, and this will actually translate exactly to the eyes, the direction where the eyes are looking. All right, so now this is correct relative to the edge of the nose. I also have to make sure that the nose itself is not too wide. This is why I started with the nose I have a tendency to make it too wide. So it could be a hair too wide. So let me adjust it. I have enough room here to do that adjustment. And this is small. This is probably a millimeter of an adjustment. Very small adjustment. Now this makes sense. It's pretty close. And now we have the tear ducts. Next thing is to look at the back side of the eye. This we can somewhat guess this measurement. And I'm going to use the eyelash because it's easy for me to see where the eyelash goes. An easy formula is the distance between the eyes is roughly the length of one of the eyes. In a frontal face, this is 3/4, kind of close to frontal. So this should be close, but not exact. Now it's exact, that's a problem. So I'm going to have to check that on the reference. I can't see it, so I'm going to have to check it, and it is exact. Go figure. It's exact. So this is exact with that. I guess that's how that works. So now we've got the features placed correctly. We know that it's correct. We've got some angles to double check it. Now follow the direction of the eye. And she's got really pretty eyes, so we can, we can see the peak of convexity on the top right there. We can see the peak of convexity really clearly. I can see clearly now the peak of convexity. And I can see all obstacles in my way, which is all in our minds. Our mind is the biggest obstacle. Because the head is in 3/4, now we are going to talk about the eyes. Because this head is in 3/4, the features are all in 3/4. Be careful of frontalization. Frontalization is a very natural human thing to do, and it causes a lot of issues. Someone that frontalized a lot, but we know and love his work, is Rembrandt. Rembrandt frontalized a lot, and it's not a criticism to Rembrandt because Rembrandt is Rembrandt. He frontalized eyes a lot. Someone else that did that but still made it great into the greats is Raphael. He also frontalized a lot. So just a little extra time to pay attention to the fact that the eyes are also in 3/4 view is going to be important. Now with a really fine brush, like this is a very fine brush. Doesn't matter, it could be an expensive brush, it could be a cheap brush. You could be using expensive oil paint, you can be using student grade oil paint. It won't make a difference for what I'm showing you. Now we must realize where the model is looking, and this is where photographs distort the most. So we are going to start with one eye, add a little bit of the sclera, the white of the eye. This is black and white. Okay, so no measuring needed there. This is black and white. And I'm actually letting this create some of a volume. So there's more light kind of like right here. And we're going to want to find the midsection of the eyes. Rather than relying on the photograph for this information, I'm going to show you how you can make sure the eyes are looking at the same thing and start with that to add the rendering on the eyes. Okay, so here you go. Look for the center line of the eyeball itself. Look for the center line. Picture the eyeball is a cue ball or a bowling ball, and look for the center line. The pupil should match the center line of the eyeball. So somewhere over here. So if that is the direction of the center line, the pupil lands right here. The edge of the eye now lands somewhere a little bit over here. That creates the iris. Okay, so now we've got the iris and the pupil. Now we can look at the other side, and you can actually, if you have some calipers, you can just directly transfer it. The pupil should match relatively close. Now it depends on the eyes. So there's the center line for the eyeball. Remember that the eyeball is a sphere, like a cue ball, and the pupil should land in that center line. The eyes, whatever she's looking at, this eye has the same angle. If you picture the ball in the center line, this eye has the same angle as this one. However, not everyone's eyes are lined up perfectly like that. Not everyone's eyes are lined up like that. So there's the pupil. Here's the edge of the iris, leaving just a thin gap right there for the sclera, and this is again the iris. So rather than just relying, now she's looking at the same thing with both eyes, rather than just relying on what the photograph tells you, try to look for the center line of the cue ball of the eye. Look for the center line of the cue ball of the eye. Now, certain forms around the eye are going to follow, and I'm going to call it the midsection of the eyeball. So the center of basically the cue ball. So I'm going to go back to the fine brush, and there's a highlight that almost always lands right on the line, but it's not directly beneath. So the highlight's not actually right above, because I'd be flattening out the eye, but the highlight is a little bit to the right because the eyelid is sticking out to protect the eyeball. So there's the pupil, and this highlight is actually a little bit to the right to protect the eyeball. That's the function of the eye socket. It's so you can take a blow to the face and you don't get hit directly in the eyeball. Same thing over here. So the highlight on the top of the eyelid's actually going to be a little bit off. Because the eye is the eyelid is actually in front of the eyeball. There you go. Eyes. And now, but wait, there's more. The tear duct, or let's just say the corner of the tear duct, follow this. This also gives us curvature on the shape of the eye socket, and the lightest part on the eye socket is actually going to be over here. And what that is telling us is where the eyeball is underneath of the tear duct. So again, not just relying on the photograph, but now we have information that we can apply. And this gives us the form modeling. Right here, follow the orbit of the eye, or the axis of the center line of the eye right there. This gives us this highlight right there. Okay, there's also a highlight, and I'm going to change the color a little bit with some blue, some cerulean blue. There's also a light that follows this pathway to the center of the lower eyelid, and it's usually, I want to say, right around here. This gives us this light. So rather than copying the photograph, we can use some knowledge to apply our tones. Same thing over here. Follow this pathway right there. And be aware of the center line of the eyeball to plan out your values. If you're able to see this like this, fast, if you're able to see these things faster every time, even if it's just 10 minutes or so faster today than you did last week, that's an improvement. And now there's planes surrounding the eye socket. They're really easy to identify because they're almost always the same on everybody. So the concavity of the eye socket, that gets a little bit darker. Once you've seen this on one person, you've seen it on all the people in the world. We're all really darn similar. It's just our likenesses vary just by small amounts. But the things that change from one path to another can be understood in terms of structure. And that is how you can work from a reference but not get stuck on the photographic look of a painting. So this is the cheekbone, zygomatic bone right on the edge. Again, these are predictable. If you've seen it once, you're gonna see it 1,000 times. Try to make it so the portrait you paint today, there's something about it that you remember tomorrow, so that you're not constantly reinventing the wheel. But focus on what makes the model you're painting different than the model you painted yesterday. Focus on specificity and as long as you're capable of making corrections, not just on your painting but on your process and on your mindset, you're going to improve. That's pretty much it. Now the rest is just rendering. But that's pretty much the gist of it, really. That's pretty much all of portrait painting for you. The rest is the rendering. And the rendering itself, there's an art form to it. And I myself find that I get stuck at a certain level of refinement. And it's not so much a color thing for me, it's a form thing, which is why I'm studying these structures, right? I mean, we're always studying for something. And so knowing what these structures are, center lines, knowing how to locate them is vital. This is pretty simple. It's just a hair. Alrighty, that's pretty much all that stuff. Now I guess I'm just gonna render. Feel free to hang out, ask any questions. I'm not gonna leave just yet though. Still got a little bit of time. But this is the crux of what I'm trying to get better at. And I think I have gotten a little bit better at it. Because I've done my homework. I've done my research. I've seen what my previous quick paintings lacked. And I'm quickly learning how to apply knowledge. Here's the orbit of the bottom of the lower eyelid. This is the orbicularis oculi. Should follow somewhat the direction of the center line of the eye. And there's a level of rendering where you actually don't need the model. That's right. There's a level of rendering where you don't need the model. And this is not for you purist artists out there that must paint everything exactly as you see it, but rather you have the information now, the structural information, and you can choose to pull the form together as much as you want. You can take a face to a Dutch master still life level, which I don't think is a good idea, but you can. It's always good to experiment with all of it. Oh, thank you, Angus. I'm glad you liked the explanation for that. Yeah, feel free to, any questions you got. It helps me to be able to articulate all the stuff that I'm trying to learn and to perfect. It helps me to try to articulate it. The side of the zygomatic could be a little too red. I like to use my more beat up brushes. These are cheap brushes. They are from the thrift store. Very cheap. I like to use them for my alkyds. My alkyd oil paints. Because alkyds dry really fast. These days I'm actually using alkyds more for my studio work than I am regular oil paint, believe it or not. Of course, this is regular oil paint. What you do to one side, you want to do it to the other. There's almost always a little bit of a cooler tone right up here. And these are things that just show up, I guess. So for the cheeks, I like to use a little bit more of a beat up brush, soft brush. And what I've learned from Bouguereau studies, and I guess a bunch of other master studies that I've done, is this area you can actually benefit from keeping a little bit more flat, a little less rounding of this area. This is why a limited palette is just fine for portraits. It'll work, it'll get the job done. You'll finish the commission, client will be happy, you'll get the monies, and you'll move on to the next one. But you can always experiment with color. And this stuff is just kind of the icing on the cake, because again, like I said, you can keep this flat, but notice how our eyes go directly to the eyes, the nose, the mouth. It's kind of how that works, isn't it? But never run out of passion. Sometimes you run out of energy, sometimes you run out of footwork, but never run out of passion. Like I said, I'm numbering these. This is number 4. Tomorrow, assuming all goes well, tomorrow we'll do number 5. Let's see how far we get. Yeah, our forehead's tall, but it's probably not that tall. Now it's time to paint this. Make sure that your changes are incremental. You don't want to make a huge change at this stage. I think I accidentally got some alkyd paint on here. So I guess it's gonna dry faster. Alright, so I made that adjustment to the forehead. Omitting or trying to avoid my tendencies to render as much as I can up here, I'm simply just going for the shape, and I guess this is covering this eye a little more. A little bit of spiked lavender, thin out the paint. This lands kind of right there. Okay, that works. I can use this line now to draw just a line for the edge of the face there. As for the chin, I don't know. Let's see if I can use the paper towel. I guess that's not subtracting. I'm gonna go back to this brush that we used earlier. And you can always push the color on the bottom of the chin closer to a reddish orange. That seems to almost always be the case. Hey Gigi, no worries. This is a new series that I'm doing where I'm not, titling it anything specific, and thanks for letting me know that the notification didn't go through, because YouTube it's a tough platform to. Well, anyway, 3 o'clock my time is usually when I will be on the internet. So regardless of the notifications, 3 o'clock DC time zone. Most days that I can, but I am living in a small apartment with my wife, so if she's off work that day or something, then I can't. Oh, the notification did work. And I'm trying to get better at like this. Like this is the thing that I'm trying to improve upon. Gonna add some blue, cerulean blue. So this stuff can be rather flat, like I was saying before. I've noticed it with Bouguereau's. It's something I'm directly trying to adapt that I've learned from my Bouguereau studies. Nelson Shanks does the opposite. He puts in a ton of form in everything. More passion, more energy everywhere. That's what Nelson does, but I'm deviating a little bit from Nelson. Yeah, I did get some alkyd in this accidentally. You see that? That's starting to dry on me. Oopsie daisy, but it's okay. These are quick paintings, so it'll be okay. More emphasis on the location of this curve and the subtlety of this curve rather than trying to add a bunch of different values. And you see, we can paint any skin color, any tonality, any ethnicity. Any human being can be painted with the same color palette. There are no distinctions. And that is any palette you want. Any palette you want. As long as you have an orange, a pink, a brown, something greenish, you'll be all good. Again, going back to my tendencies, I have a tendency to make faces too wide. So it may be just a fraction of an inch, could be a centimeter, something small, but almost always right here. Yeah, almost like right there. Again, not really rounding stuff out there like I usually do, but rather trying to get the drawing with color, with passion and energy and brushwork. More passion, more energy, more brushwork. And you see, even though there's not so much on the lips, it's like our eyes can forgive us a little bit. A little bit of blue. A little bit of blue for this edge. Don't want to do too much. I don't want to lose the value. Over blending. Let me think. I'm trying to even imagine what over blending is. Like making stuff maybe too soft. Maybe that's what we're talking about. Let me think. It could be that I'm over blending stuff and I'm not even aware of it, but I'd say the best thing to do is focus on planes, but not just planes for the sake of planes, but the anatomical beginnings and endings of structures on the face. And the face is not that complicated. There's very repeatable structures on the face. Once you've found them in one model, you're gonna find them again on another model like this. This is the corner of the side of the mouth. There's usually a little dark shape right on the corner of the mouth there. It's on a Rembrandt, it's on a Sargent, it's on a Nelson Shanks, it's on all of us. However, depending on our individual likenesses, we could have more of a smile line here, or like this model, it could be a little bit more flat. But knowing where these forms begin and end, structure is always going to be the answer, I think, to any technical stuff. But how to apply the structure, I guess, is more important. So hopefully that kind of helps. Oh, I'm good. I'm glad. Oh, good. I'm glad that the little adjustment on the edge. And I'm trying to focus on more drawing related stuff and constantly improving by painting from life, doing master studies, and now this is a whole separate exercise. The secret is more passion, more energy, more brush work. Let's keep that brush moving, keep the motivation. Alright, let's put a little bit more color on the lips. Yeah, and it appears I accidentally got some of my alkyd paints on my mixtures. Because right after I'm done here, I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to go back to painting. I paint every day. I'm gonna have a shop update. Lucy has, my wife Lucy has made a wonderful website where my paintings are gonna be sold. Not just my paintings though, merchandise, hats, shirts, postcards, bookmarks, mugs. All these things are going to be for sale on my website. I personally like the idea of designing shirts. Just applying painting to something a little bit more commercial. This is why I'm painting every day, so I can use my paintings for things like that. Yeah, I'm usually using different brushes. Yes, I am using different brushes than I usually do. I'm glad you picked up on that. So, in all honesty and transparency, these yellow brushes are from the thrift store. These are cheap brushes, and I use them because, well, they're cheap, but also because these days I'm working with alkyds, and they dry real fast, and I don't want to damage these more expensive brushes. I use these for like adding in a bunch of paint for the face, but for fine little adjustments, I kind of prefer these brushes. Yes, they are different brushes. These are synthetic, cheap. I think these are acrylic brushes. But I mean, they work. They work. I hope that using the cheaper brushes won't deter anyone from wanting to buy my paintings, because the brushes do not determine the brushwork. The brushes do not determine the passion, the energy, or the brushwork. It is the force. The use of the force. How much of a Jedi are you with painting? That's what determines your brushwork. Almost there. We got about 4 minutes. So I usually end at 5. Today was a little shorter. Today was only an hour and a half because I was late. Sorry. But I usually try to do 2 hours. There's that highlight that we added in the beginning. Now I can allow myself to do this little soft edge that I wanted to paint earlier, but I didn't. I had some discipline. And I waited. I'm using a New Wave Posh wooden palette right now, but I do prefer to use my my other one. But I had too much paint, too much alkyd that was drying on my other one. Have a good night, Mark L. Thanks for joining. And again, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you, thank you. So an hour and a half for a face. It's kind of worked. It kind of works. And the alkyd, the alkyd is telling me time to stop. So another reason I like using alkyd is because it stops me from working too long on any one particular spot. I can't wait to show you all the studio work that I'm doing. I'm going a little crazy again. This time I'm adding birds, a goose and a duck in a portrait painting. Also like an ancient hieroglyphic, made up ancient hieroglyphic with a Shiba. Alrighty then. I'm glad you like the eyes, UG. This is a clean brush. See, nothing's coming off. Clean brush. I like to use this at the end. I stand back, or in this case, sit back if I see anything, and of course bump into my camera, if I see anything that looks completely like it's sticking out too much, then I will use this to blend it away. This is the only thing I think. But these things kind of add character. So I don't want to over soften anything. In fact, I might just want to leave that. So these things, they build character. This is almost dry. Almost completely dry now. Because I accidentally had some alkyd on my mixtures. I'm going to have to buy a bigger palette. Oops. But of course I do prefer to use my I call it the Forever palette. It's a custom made palette with a item number and everything, but my alkyds were just drying on it and making me a little nervous. I don't want to ruin the mixing space on it. Yeah, it's a 9x12. 9x12. Alrighty. It is now 5:01. And I'm gonna sign our painting of today. And the schedule, I'm gonna do my best to stick with 3 p.m. like 3 to 5. Most days, Monday through Friday. So if anything happens and I can't one day, at least you'll know 3 p.m. sometime in the week. There you go. No, I don't think Stay Wet will work with alkyds because that has the water. But I mean, I guess you can mix on the plastic area. But with alkyds, I would recommend what probably would be better is glass with alkyds, if I'm gonna be completely honest, because then you don't have to worry about it drying in your mixing space. However, I don't really like painting on glass. I don't like the feel of it. I prefer painting on a wooden palette. So for me, the New Wave Posh palette is kind of like the best of both worlds. And yeah, this is what it looks like. Though I think I'm gonna get a bigger one because I kind of ran out of space. And I actually like to rest my elbow like next to the palette as I'm painting, just because I paint so many hours. It's a little bit more comfortable for me. But that is all I got for you today. Like I said, 2 hours is pretty good. It doesn't tire me out too much, and it's enough time to get something done. Like this is all right for me. I think for 2 hours, and it's also enough time to like make mistakes and then try to correct them the next time, like making faces too wide and stuff like that, like I was doing before. And obviously it's not going to be perfect, but it's all about having consistency. So once again, thank you Mark L for the super chat. Thank you all so much for joining. I wish you all the very best, and I'll see you next time.